I'd like to call the Tuesday, September 2nd, 2014 Papillion City Council meeting to order. Mrs. Butler, would you please take the roll?
Florence. Here. Mumgard. Here. Gaines. Here. Glover. Here. Jaworski. Here. Klug. Here. Stubbe. Here. Ingberg.
Here. Would you please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. And do we have an affidavit of publication on file?
That is correct.
And a current copy of the Open Meetings Act is posted in the back of the council chambers. We have one presentation tonight. We've got some of the Mayor's Youth Council with us. You guys want to come up, introduce yourself, and give a presentation? Let's know what school you go to, too.
Of high school.
I'm Haley Roseman. I'm the secretary of the Papillion Mayor's Youth Leadership Council, and I go to the Monarchs.
I'm Kaylin Pratt. I'm the youth liaison, and I go to Papillion South.
I'm Christian. I'm in the Upper Council, Papillion Mayor's Youth Council, and I go to La Vista Junior High.
I'm Rebecca Fisher, and I'm in 8th grade at Papillion Junior High.
Thank you. Go ahead. There we go.
Okay, here's our motto of the Papillion Mayor's Youth Council. We're the leaders of tomorrow. And we added the leadership part into the Mayor's Youth Leadership Council now. And here's our thing. To encourage and equip the youth of Papillion to become civilly involved, preparing them to become the community leaders of tomorrow. We're going to describe our spring and summer events, starting with the citywide Easter egg hunt. We also had the marathon. We had, in the Easter egg hunt, I'm going to go backwards. At one of our work meetings, we made the posters that we corralled the kids into with different age groups. So they weren't all going at once because there were a billion people there. So we spread out the eggs, and we had certain people to keep the little kids in so they didn't wander off. And then, because sometimes afterwards we have to find some of the kids, which is kind of scary. So yeah. At the marathon, I was working at the bounce house. So if one of you guys want to talk about this a little bit.
At the marathon, our main job was to hand out the water. They would run by and act like they liked it and throw it in our face pretty much. But they would drink maybe half a glass, and they seemed to enjoy it, and they would thank us for it. So. Yeah. Anyone else go there? I think. Okay.
I was at the bounce house for that, and that was just another fun thing that's also around the marathon area. And my job was just to make sure that there wasn't too many kids bouncing at once. So that was interesting. We also had Papillion Days. I sang at Papillion Idol, so I wasn't working there, but it turned out great, which I can say because I participated in that. Me and Maggie Murtha helped hold the sign for the parade. It was very windy that day, so that was a lot of fun. What else guys?
I have the sign for the King Queen.
You want to say one?
Okay. Well, Spencer Rawl and I, Spencer Rawl's not here, but we held the sign for the King and Queen of Papillion. We also had to hand out candy. Yeah.
We also held the youth dance that was located in the actual Papillion Days area, and we thought it went pretty well. We had a lot more people came this year than last year because we had different promoting options. So it was just a good opportunity to help our youth kind of get more involved in Papillion.
I did the dance with her, so.
Okay, we can go to the next one.
We also did the car wash, over $300, and we had a lot of fun. It wasn't so hot this year, so that was good, although we would have had water to cool off with. Do you guys want to talk about that?
I stood on the bridge and held
That
sign
was-
for like 4 hours. It was a lot of fun. I got honked at a lot. People waved. It was nice. People noticed us, and it was a lot of fun. Like, I had fun.
Yeah, we had some people advertising while some people were washing the cars, and we got like a lot of like people in line, so that was really good. Ropes course, that was really cool. We went to like the Outdoor Ed Center in Gretna, and we had some speakers talk to us, like the city administrator. So that was cool. Well, he's not here today, but yeah, he talked to us about how he got there and everything. And then we went on the Odyssey course, and if you're afraid of heights like me, that was kind of scary, but you know, you like learn leadership. You have to trust everyone with all the activities we did there. I'll talk about some stuff, guys.
And Mayor Black also spoke there, and it was just really great to see his point of view on leadership and how he actually got involved in the actual Papillion City Council. So that was really cool to see that, and how like you can progress from just being like us and then going up to an area of office like you guys.
We learned it's important not to set goals, and we are supposed to not speak up in class, because that is what the mayor did, and he's done just fine. Because there were 2 days that we went. There was one week, and then for those people that couldn't go that week, we had a second day. That's why she didn't know that the mayor was with us. And then, yeah, like she said, we learned so much in such a little bit of time, mostly names for the lower council people. It's crazy how we see them like once a month, and we don't know who they are until we need them for our life. We feel like, yeah, we have the tightrope and everything, but all of a sudden we need their hand to latch on, otherwise we're floating in midair. So it was a very nice bonding experience as well.
Okay, yeah, this is just saying more of like the speakers we had, and we had to rely on people to, like, we couldn't just do it ourselves for some of the things. Like, we had to lean on each other, and I was with a shorter member, so we almost fell over, but we worked it out. Yep, here's more. We get a challenge.
Oh, yeah. If you want to join us, we're
Yeah.
getting volunteers now.
Exciting. Yeah, these are some more fun pictures. At the end, we had to, what's it called? Where you
Zip
like
line. You
zip line down. Yeah, that was also very scary for me because I'm not a fan of heights. There's OT posing in front of us.
Officer Tackett fell when he ziplined. He ziplined and just kind of like, right on there. It was fun. We got it.
Time interference for the challenge. Right behind you. He's got 2 of us. Bob. There's 3. Troy. Sure. There's 4. Jim.
Hey, we got 4. You have 5.
Will you sign this in blood?
It's pretty sweet next year.
Joanne.
Absolutely.
So
We should have passed around a sign-up sheet.
yeah. Another thing we do is we clean up the road that's right by Dick's Sporting Goods. Yeah, we find some interesting stuff there, so that can be fun sometimes. Let's see what some things we found. We found some underwear once. A full thing of McDonald's.
Oh.
Yeah, so we weren't sure if we were supposed to throw that away.
We
A
found,
lot of cigarettes.
we found like, I don't know how long, how many packing peanuts that were spread across the road that we had to stop. We couldn't pick them all up, sadly. So.
When they were building that new like apartment place, there was a lot more trash during that, but it's pretty much done now, so that's good. And that's it.
Any questions for council? Mr. Mumgard.
Yeah, I want to ask you about your finances here. You raised over $300 for future council activities at your car wash. What, if anything, was the cost of the retreat? I'm just curious, how are we doing that with the finances? Or am I asking the wrong people?
Wrong
We
people.
raised pretty much all of it, didn't we?
We've got leadership development programmed in.
You what?
We've got it programmed in, the leadership development.
Because we would have had to pay like $15 each, but
Yeah,
we did the
$15
car wash, so that pretty much covered that, it sounds like.
That was kind
Okay.
of our goal. To make a
Yeah,
little bit
that's
more
what the
money.
car wash was for, is to raise money for that.
Well, we're going to consider the budget tonight. I was just wondering if you need more money in the future.
Well, I mean, we have the car wash, so I mean that's working pretty well.
You can always like help out too.
Yeah.
So we have full responsibility.
We can do
Well,
more
what do
car
you-
washes.
Okay, you have a full year to think about that and talk to that guy up there about what kind of funding you need for the coming year.
You know, we might need some more money.
You always need something.
But if you have enough car washes, you don't need to do that. So good luck with it.
I do want to thank you. A lot of the activities you guys mentioned, you mentioned they were fun, but they've got a big impact on the quality of life in Papillion. You guys have a big impact. I mean, Papillion Days, between the youth dance and Papillion Idol, those both have grown. You mentioned the dance had grown. Papillion Idol has grown huge. And that's direct for the youth, so thank you for that. Things like the marathon, we talk a lot about it, but a third of the people that come to that marathon come from outside the state of Nebraska, so when they're here, they're going shopping, they're getting sales tax, things like that. And we get comments after every single race about the high quality of the races, and people come here because of those, and so you guys have a role in that too. And the Easter egg hunt, how many Easter eggs were put out? 20,000 eggs were put out, so just the logistics of that, but the volume of people that come in a short period of time, and you mentioned it, kids can get lost in there. So again, we have to police that, and somebody loses their kid, that can be a traumatic event. So again, you guys being there, helping watch that and aid us in that, saves us money as well. So just thank you for all you do. Appreciate it.
Thanks a lot.
Thanks. Ms. Myers. Administrator's report, please.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a couple real quick things. First of all, I'm sure you've noticed a different face at the I guess our seats today. And Michelle Hinkle is filling in for Mark Sturzma tonight. She was recently promoted to the planning position in the planning department. So welcome, Michelle, to your first meeting. So if you have any questions, I'm sure she'll be able to help you out. And the last thing is that Dog Day at the Bay is on Sunday. So bring your dogs out. That is from 1 to 4. That's all I have.
I appreciate it. Do we have a motion to approve the consent agenda? Motion by Councilman Gaines. Second by Councilwoman Klug.
Mayor, I would like to pull C6.
C6 is pulled. Do we have proponents? Do we have any opponents? Any council discussion? Please vote on everything except C6.
8 yeas, 0 nays.
Motion passes. Next is item C6, Resolution R140144, a resolution to approve special designated liquor licenses for Twisted Vine for a sip and walk event in downtown Papillion at Dingman's Collision Center, the Bell Place Shops, Kajoma's Boutique, Your Country Connections, Weathered and Worn, A2O Contracting, Jean's Auto and Truck Service, Papillion Antiques and Emporium, Sauter House, Sarpy Family Conflict Center, and Northwoods Cheese House on September 18, 2014 from 6 p.m. to 9 p.m. Do we have a motion to approve? Motion by Councilman Ingberg. Second by Councilman Jaworski. Do we have proponents? Bill, you want to? Be a good time to give a little commercial of what you're doing.
Great. Kim Ehlers, president of the Downtown Papillion Business Association. I'm here with
Bill A. Gardner with Twisted Vine, also with the Downtown Papillion Business Association.
We'd like to thank everyone for the support we've had. This will be our third and final sip and walk of the season. So far, it's been a hit. Each one gets a little bigger and a little better. We've been very pleased with the attendance, compliments. We've had some wonderful suggestions. We are going to increase the start time to 1 hour earlier to allow people a little more time. You know, everyone walks at a different pace, and so this will allow some of the people who want to take a little slower pace to make it through all the stops. We've also added a hay rack trolley, which with more addition of locations and businesses throughout downtown Papillion, there'll be 7 stops at different corners where they'll be able to step on board and ride a trolley to help progress, and it helps a little bit with the heat as well.
One additional piece that we'd like to do this evening is invite everyone here down to the last and final event of the season. One thing that we've done is I brought a few additional glasses that I'll leave in the lobby this evening for anybody here at council. That'll be your admission for the evening, just to come down and see the success we've had and the camaraderie that we've built in the downtown area. So we'd really like to have you all down there if you can make it on the 18th.
And congratulations on the article in the Midlands Business Journal this week. Twisted Vine was a full-page article in there, and thanks for the credit you gave to the Downtown Business Association and the partnership there as well. You guys have been doing some great things.
I've not actually seen it yet, so I need to get my hands on it.
It was a good article.
Thank you.
Any council questions? Any opponents? Any council discussion? Please vote.
8 yeas, 0 nays.
Motion passes. Thank you. Next is item E1. E1 and E2 are related. E1, Ordinance 1700, an ordinance to approve the change of zone of certain real property within the zoning jurisdiction of the City of Papillion, Sarpy County, Nebraska, legally described as a platting of tax lots 6 and 12B in the northeast quarter of Section 34, Township 14 North, Range 12 East, generally located at 500 Valley Road, from single-family residential low-density R1 and agricultural AG to multiple-family residential R4, to amend the official zoning map of the City of Papillion by changing the zoning district boundaries of the zoning map in accordance with Section 20532 of the Papillion Municipal Code, and to provide for an effective date. This is a public hearing. I'll open the public hearing. Do we have proponents?
Doug Lewis, Assistant Superintendent for Papillion Vista Schools. The school district is asking for the rezoning of this property. We're at phase 2 of our Trumbull Park bond project, which is in addition to the building. We currently have 2 lots that we are rezoning to 1 lot. The building project will encroach on the 2nd lot, so that with that responsibility, we need to rezone by rezoning at a multi-use purpose that will allow us in the future, when we have future additions on Trumbull Park, if we should do that, to forego having to do a special use permit in order to do those additions on the property. So.
There have been some questions from the public about the school's intent. Because of moving to an R4, it does allow the multifamily. And as you mentioned, it makes it easier so the school doesn't have to get the special use permit when it expands the school in the future.
Correct.
Can you say what the school's long-term intent with that property is? Is it to be a school for ever?
It is our intent to have that school be a school forever, to serve the population of the housing developments that we have in that area. We have no other school in the vicinity to do that. So, okay.
Appreciate that. Do we have any other proponents? Do we have any opponents? Anybody neutral and just want to ask a question? Close the public hearing. Next is item F1, Resolution R14-0136. This is a public hearing and a vote. A preliminary plat for the property legally described as Tax Lot 6 together with Tax Lot 12B, all in the northeast quarter of Section 34, Township 14 North, Range 12 East of the 6th PM of Sarpy County, Nebraska. Generally located at 500 Valley Road. The applicant is Papillion La Vista School District, number 27, Trumbull Park. This is a public hearing. I'll open the public hearing. Proponents, and I'll carry the testimony over from the previous one, Dr. Lewis. Any other proponents? Do we have any opponents? I'll close the public hearing. Do we have a motion to approve Resolution R14-0136? I missed the motion. Motion by Councilman Glover. Second by Councilman Stube. Any council discussion? Mr. Mumgard.
Yeah, I'm particularly interested in the part of the staff report that mentions the fee waiver issue, and as I understand it, there's a request by the school district to waive a significant amount of fees, and as a result of that request, there's a policy being drafted that would apply to the school district in this request and similar requests in the future, right?
That's correct.
And as I understand it, that policy then is going to be presented to us at our next meeting, and that a positive vote on this resolution in no way impacts what we do or don't do with that waiver, correct?
That's correct. Tonight's is just for the preliminary plat. Any vote on a policy will be with the final. So if you vote affirmative here, you are not committing yourself to a vote one way or another on the policy.
Okay, well, that's good, because I'm very interested in that policy. I think there's some very good public policy arguments to be made in favor of waiving, in favor of, I hate to use the word waiving the fee, but in not imposing the fee. So I want to keep that door open for that public policy discussion.
Okay, thank you. Any other council discussion? Please vote.
8 yeas, 0 nays.
Motion passes. Item F2, Ordinance 1696, an ordinance to amend the budget statement to be termed the annual appropriation bill, which was adopted on January 7, 2014 by Ordinance 1677, to appropriate sums for necessary expenses and liabilities and to provide for an effective date. This is a budget amendment for the current budget year 2013-2014. Do we have a motion to approve Ordinance 1696? Motion by Councilman Ingberg. Second by Councilwoman Klug. Any council discussion? Please vote.
Eight yeas, 0 nays.
Motion passes. Next is item F3, Ordinance 1697, an ordinance to adopt the budget statement to be termed the annual appropriation bill to appropriate sums for necessary expenses and liabilities and to provide for an effective date. This is the budget for the 2014-2015 fiscal year. Do you have a motion to approve Ordinance 1697? Motion by Councilman Glover. Second by Councilwoman Klug. Any council discussion? We do have a couple of amendments, the standard ones that we do every single year. I'll go ahead and read them and see if we get them. Item 1A, motion to approve the 1% increase to the lid. This is the Restricted Funds Authority. This does require a supermajority, and we do this one every year as a matter of course. Do we have a motion? Motion by Councilman Stubbe. Second by Councilman Jaworski. Do we have any proponents just on the motion? Any opponents? Any council discussion? Please vote. And this one does require supermajority.
8 yeas, 0 nays.
Motion passes. The next motion that was published is a motion to approve an amendment to increase real and personal property tax based on the final certified valuation from Sarpy County in order to maintain the current levy. Is there a council member that will make a motion? Motion by Councilwoman Klug. Second by Councilman Jaworski. Do we have proponents? Do we have any opponents? Any council discussion? Please vote.
8 yeas, 0 nays.
Motion passes. Are there any other amendments to be made? Mr. Ingberg.
Yes, Mayor. Before all the council seats tonight, there's some information for you. My amendments to very modestly make a couple changes to the library board budget. As most of you may know, that the library board was given a couple of options to deal with the budget, whether it be to participate with all the other departments or to have the city council review the budget. To that end, the mayor, I won't make this a long drawn out thing, the mayor referred it to the finance committee, which I'm the chairman of, to review the budget request. Two of the members were there. Mr. Schroeder was there. And Steve Krieger, I believe, was there as well. Anyway, as a result of discussion that evening, the majority, not everywhere, but the majority of the members had some questions, particularly in four areas. That's what you see before you tonight. Subsequent to that meeting, I sent a letter to the library board for just to summarize the meeting and the concerns that were expressed in a couple of areas. They responded in kind back to the mayor. We've since had a public hearing and no one appeared for or against it. So to address those concerns, like I said, it just brings things in line with what we do with all the city staff, with one exception. The line items that I'm asking to reduce, again, are pretty modest, is the tuition reimbursement would decrease by $300. That reflects the information the staff provided to me to do the tuition reimbursement like we do for all the rest of our employees. What I heard the other night at the committee meeting, and one of the reasons for this one and a couple of the other ones, is we want to be able to look at all of our employees and say that everybody's operating under the same rules. All of our employees have to put a percentage of contribution out of their own pocket into tuition reimbursement. The library's never changed that. They've been reimbursed 100%. To be fair, I put this in here to reflect the highest percentage the city puts in, which is 90%. Again, it's pretty modest, but it brings it in line with what we do with all our other employees. The full-time and part-time salaries, I simply asked, again, the city staff to put together the numbers for me and to tell me what changes need to be made in order to operate on the same basis. You guys have the information that we do with all of our other departments, full and part-time salaries. So there's reflected decreases there as well. And the last one, which is probably the biggest one, was I've asked for a reduction in the natural gas line item, primarily because historically the highest has been cost that we've had is $5,100, give or take. And the budget that was proposed was like $12,000. We never did get an answer why we're budgeting more than double than what historically we've needed, so that's reflected as well. I should say it's not all reduction either. The mayor, and I absolutely concur, not that I need to, but asked to increase, and I put that in there as well, to $7,500 to include the library in the study with the community center, because it makes good fiscal sense. First of all, it's not only going to save a little money at the front end, but long term, I think it'll be beneficial for everybody. But when you roll back the final amount in this budget, it actually only decreases by 1.6%. It reflects a $14,231 decrease. As I said, it's just those four items, and I think it's reasonable, and I support it, and I'll leave it up to the rest of the council whether they do as well.
And that's made in a motion?
Yes, Mayor, thank you.
Okay. Is there a second? Was it clear on what the motion was? Okay, second by Councilman Gaines. Do we have proponents? Do we have any opponents? Anybody want to speak? Any council discussion? Mr. Mumgard.
Yeah, okay, I see that there's the president of the chairman of the president of the library board here, and the director, and I guess I'll let either one of you, if you could come forward. I'm just trying to reconcile something in your July 30th letter with what we're considering doing here. And I guess maybe Robin, you might be the best one to answer the questions. Okay, I'm looking at that letter, and there are several subject matters. And one, I'll go kind of in order. One is that the question about the library management exempt employees step system as opposed to the performance system. Mm-hmm. And as I read your letter, it sounds like you're asking for more information about how the performance system works before you make a decision on whether you should go from the step system to the performance system.
That's correct. That's what the board requested at the last board meeting.
Well, what was the general, I guess, I'm not saying commitment, or general direction the board was looking at? Is the board receptive to moving toward the performance system, or to matching your compensation system with ours?
I would say that the board is receptive to having a discussion about what that move looks like and how it affects the current evaluation process for the staff, sir.
Well, if we reduce the full-time salaries, I assume that the management exempt employees, those are people that are full-time, right?
Yes, sir.
So if we reduce the full-time salaries, what does that mean in your use of the step system? Does that, I mean, basically, are we, by taking the money away from the full-time salaries, are we jumping the gun and effectively negating the use of the step system?
That's correct.
Oh, okay. So if we take 3,000 away, it's going to be difficult for you to continue the step system that employees have been using for years and which are part of your personnel manual?
That's correct.
Okay, well then secondly, the tuition reimbursement. Okay, I mean, it seems to me that part of the problem here with both tuition and the salaries is that you're using a personnel manual that's different than ours.
That's correct, sir.
But you say that you're moving toward adopting a new library personnel manual?
It's already been submitted to the city, sir.
Yeah. Okay, and as a result of that, if that's changed, then your tuition reimbursement system will match ours, right?
Yeah, would match the $3,000 max for a graduate degree, which is what we budgeted, which is a $3,000 max for tuition reimbursement for a master's degree.
Okay, well, just nuts and bolts here. Why did the natural gas line item jump up like it did? What's the thought process behind that? And I don't want to get the numbers right, but
I have the numbers right here, sir. In 2009, which was my first budget year, it was budgeted at $15,000, and year-to-date actual was $14,237 in 2009. That was the first year that I was here. In 2010, it was still budgeted at $15,000. The cost went down to $10,280. In 2011, it was still budgeted at $15,000, and the cost went down to $6,777. So it went down about $4,000 a year. At the same time, the electricity increased.
okay, continue on for the next 2 years then.
Natural gas in 2012 was $15,000 budgeted, and $4,200 were spent. This year to date, $15,000 was budgeted, $4,522 is year to date, and that led us to lower the budget request this year from $15,000 to $12,000.
Okay, why is it fluctuating so much?
It's my belief that it has continued to go down and go down drastically because the library 2 years ago purchased computerized heating and air conditioning system that automatically turns heat on and off. And that's where we've seen some great savings, not only in our natural gas, but in our electric bill.
Well, and you said the electric bill went up. What was causing that?
The only thing we can think about that was before the last 2 years. So hot summers.
Okay. Well, if you're budgeting $12,000, average over the last 3 years is roughly, just my math challenge, so help me out here, but the average is roughly $5,000. Why were you budgeting 12 if the average over 3 years was 5?
Because of the fluctuation. I didn't feel like 3 years was enough to base that on when we've seen it 5 years ago at 15,000.
Oh, okay. Well, and then in your letter with the budget considerations, I just want to make sure I'm clear on what's being said here. You point out that you are unique among the other departments in that we select people to be on your board, and you're given by statute authority to make decisions. Now you point out that 3 items here, and you say that they're outside the scope of the city council and they're decisions for the library board of trustees. That's the training, conference, and tuition reimbursement, the natural gas, and the consulting fees, I think. Are those the 3 you're talking about?
Well, I would have to say any line item, sir.
Okay, now that's where I'm trying to reconcile. We have a budget in front of us with line items, including the library. And then so we appropriate money, and you're saying then you decide how it gets spent when it gets down to the line item level.
That's correct, sir.
Well, how is that decision? All right, but we're all working together, and we're all, I'll say, equally accountable for how the money gets spent. We get accountable on a public level, probably more so than the board does. How does the board approach those kinds of decisions? I mean, in deciding the line items, for example, I mean, I don't want to sit here and do something that tends to be useless. If we cut back on certain line items and you have the freedom to just change that, and maybe you do, I'm not going to decide that. What approach are you guys using when you do that?
We're using the approach of a governing board, which by Nebraska statute says that they have budget line authority. City Council has bottom line authority.
And there's a good reason for that in my view. You know, and I don't criticize any of the areas in which these suggestions are being made. I don't think they're in any way made with ill motive or anything like that. I'm just trying to reconcile what you were telling us in your letter there with what we have to do here.
Yes, sir.
Well, okay, with moving backwards, if we start with our bottom line authority and give you less money, you're saying, well, number one, that will accomplish basically negating some provisions of your personnel manual, and two, what impact will it have on running the library?
We will have to adjust other lines to meet the needs.
You just move it around within
As
your
most
line
departments
item
do,
budget.
yes, sir.
So if we, for example, reduce the tuition reimbursement, if your view of the statutes is correct, then you would just be able to move money from one line item to another to offset that, right?
Only up to $3,000, which is the city personnel policy. The city personnel policy states $3,000 is the top. So we would never reimburse more than $3,000 in tuition reimbursement.
Would that work the same way with the full-time and part-time salaries?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. I think I understand
Thank you.
better.
Thank you. Any other council discussion? If not, Mr. Mumgard, did you have more? Okay. Any other opponents? Mr. Mumgard, go ahead.
Okay, now I'm going to vote against the amendment. In part because I just think it's a little preliminary, too preliminary. If they're in the process of amending or changing or altering their personnel manuals to reach a goal that I think is an admirable goal, that your manuals ought to match ours, and your tuition reimbursements process ought to match ours, that we don't need a difference of opinion going across, or a difference of approach going across the street here. We can debate later on which approach is wiser, but I think there ought to be just one approach. But if they're in the process of doing that, then I don't see much point in forcing their hand and perhaps getting in the way of a good change by reducing the line items in the way that we're doing it. So it might be worthwhile, but it needs to be something done with more of a long-term discussion and changes with the board than we're approaching it with, and so I'm going to vote against it.
Mr. Jaworski.
I'm going to vote for it, and this is the reason. We hold all our other department heads accountable to the budget, and this is no different. And I already think I know the answer to this, but I am going to ask it. On my line item here, it says $15,000 to $6,500 for natural gas. Now, let's say the natural gas is $7,500 for the year. We're going to give them the money to pay the bill, aren't we?
But typically, what we would do is if we have unusual utilities in any department, they're going to be still expected to manage to their budget unless the council does an amendment. So if there's high utility bills somewhere, that department needs to offset that somehow, unless it's so unusual they want to bring an amendment forward to the council. And we do, a couple of times a year, do amendments, but generally we're looking for an offsetting revenue source, or how is that being funded, and that would be addressed during that amendment process.
Okay, and that's pretty much what I was thinking too. We're not going to let them get shut off, basically, if they were out of money. So I think they're no different than our department heads. We hold our department heads to a high standard, and I think we need to do the same here.
Any other council discussion? Mr. Mumgarden.
Well, I just want to clarify, I'm certainly not suggesting that the board should not be held to a high standard. They should, and they should not spend money freely. They should be as tight with the money as we would be. I just look at it that they are different than our departments. You find any state statute that suggests that the recreation department gets to decide how they spend their money, and then I'll say that they're the same as recreation department, but there is no such thing, and some very good reasons for them to be different than the other departments. And I just want to clarify that, no, I'm not saying that in any way the board should not be accountable. They're accountable to us directly. We're the ones that appoint them. We're the ones that vote on whether they should be on the board or not. If they're making bad decisions, then we need to do something about it. And that's the process that ought to be followed in my mind, and it has nothing to do with whether anybody's being held accountable or is allowing to be a spendthrift.
Mr. Ingberg.
Well, yeah, I certainly don't want to have a big debate about it. It's pretty basic and pretty modest and pretty reasonable, I think. And Mr. Bumgarner and I will probably disagree in one respect. He is correct. They operate under separate rules, and they operate under a separate board of the city council. But what I heard at the committee meeting, and I guess frankly, I've always maintained, no matter who is on the board or library director, on the other hand, I have to be able to look at all the other employees who are sitting in this room with a straight face and say, you know, we're all city employees. We should all be part of a team. We should all try very hard to make it equitable for everyone. We ask all of our employees, but library employees, which are also city employees, to pay into tuition. The library doesn't, employees, which are city employees, don't do that. Same way with salaries. When we went to the performance-based system, we should have done it across the board, but as you rightly say, Mr. Mumgarden, we just do the funding. We don't control how it's spent necessarily. And that's the only direction I'm coming from is when you budget double what you traditionally need for a line item, I think, because, and you sat here and said the same thing yourself, we're responsible, bottom line, we're responsible for the funding. We're responsible for providing the revenue, and we're responsible for making sure it's responsible. To me, these four items are just being responsible. Now, if for the next 6 months or the next year, we're able to get to a position where everyone's on the same personnel pay plan, it's fabulous. But the here and now of it is we're not. And the here and now of it is I try to be fair to everybody. But I don't think, and if anybody wants to find fault with me for trying to be fair, and after meeting, and after sending a letter, and after getting a response that didn't really address any of the concerns monetarily, but rather philosophically, if anybody wants to say I'm being unfair, I'll welcome that criticism with open arms, because I don't feel I am. But I do appreciate your comments, Mr. Mumgarden. They're well thought out.
Any other council? Mr. Mumgarden.
I just have a procedural question. Would I be, procedurally, can I make a motion to amend his amendment, which would be a substitute motion, and just reduce one line item rather than the four?
Robert's rule interpretation. Proper way to do that.
I think I make a substitute motion and that gets voted on before the other
Before.
motion. If it's
And then if yours
seconded.
fails, the motion to amend is still on the floor.
Okay. Well, then at this time, I would make a substitute motion to reduce line item 4320 for natural gas from 15,000 to 6,500. And that would be the only reduction.
Is there a second? Second. So the substitute motion fails for lack of a second, which leaves the original motion on the floor. Any other council discussion? Please vote.
Seven yeas, one nay. Nay by Councilmember Mumgarde.
Motion passes. Are there any other council amendments? Seeing none, any council discussion on the original motion as amended 3 times? No council discussion? Please vote on the original motion as amended.
8 yeas, 0 nays.
Motion passes. Thank you. Next is item F4. Resolution R14-0139, a public hearing and a vote. A resolution to approve setting the 2014-2015 property tax request. This is a public hearing. I'll open the public hearing. Do we have proponents? Do we have any opponents? Close the public hearing. Do you have a motion to approve resolution R14-0139? Motion by Councilman Jaworski. Second by Councilman Florence. Any council discussion? Please vote.
8 yeas, 0 nays.
Motion passes. Next is item F5, Ordinance 1698. An ordinance to amend in its entirety Chapter 146 of the Papillion Municipal Code having to do with door-to-door sales, mobile vendors, and facility use and event permits, general provisions, definitions, door-to-door sales, mobile vendors, facility use and event permits, enforcement, violations, penalties, and to provide for an effective date. Is there a motion to approve Ordinance 1698? Motion by Councilwoman Klug. Second by Councilman Glover. Any council discussion? Please vote.
8 yeas, 0 nays.
Related item F6, Resolution R14-0134, a resolution to approve an amendment to the master fee schedule pertaining to door-to-door sales, mobile vendors, and facility use and event permits. Is there a motion to approve Resolution R14-0134? Motion by Councilman Klug, second by Councilman Gaines. Any proponents? Any opponents? Council discussion? Please vote.
8 yeas, 0 nays.
Motion passes. Item F7, Resolution R14-0129, public hearing and a vote. A resolution to approve a Class C liquor license for Trusty Bolt, Inc., doing business as Wine Cellar 510 Wine Bar and Shop, 7474 Town Center Parkway, Suite 105, and a manager application for Edward Bolton. This is a public hearing. I'll open the public hearing. Proponents? Mr. Bolton's here, I believe. You want to come up and introduce yourself? Give a commercial as well.
Hi, I'm Edward Bolton, the manager and co-owner of Wine Cellar 510. We're a retail wine, coffee, tea shop. We also have on-premise wine, coffee, and tea, as well as a few spirits as well.
And you're in an existing space that was that same use before, right?
That's correct.
Okay. Wonderful. Do we have any other proponents? Any opponents? I'll close the public hearing. Mr. Jaworski.
I was waiting for council discussion.
Okay. Do we have a motion to approve Resolution R14-0129?
Motion.
Motion by Councilman Jaworski. Second by Councilwoman Klug. Council discussion. Mr. Jaworski.
Okay, I was kind of a fan of morning, noon, and night. Am I going to be a fan of 510 Wine Cellar?
You already are.
You are.
Any other council discussion? All right. Any other council discussion? Please vote.
8 yeas, 0 nays.
And again, you guys are Papillion residents opening a Papillion business and actually keeping the same concept going. So you're keeping a business alive and starting a business. So thank you very much for your investment.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Next is item F8, Resolution R140135, a resolution to approve a supplemental agreement number 2 with the State of Nebraska Department of Roads for the fiscal year 2014 municipal resurfacing project. This is contingent. No, we already approved that. Do we have a motion to approve Resolution R140135? Motion by Councilman Klug. Second by Councilman Stube. Proponents? Do we have any opponents? Council discussion? Please vote.
8 yeas, 0 nays.
Motion passes. F9, Resolution R140137, a resolution to award the contract for Veterans Park Waterline relocation to Pat Thomas Construction of Omaha, Nebraska in the amount of $84,350. Do we have a motion to approve Resolution R140137? Motion by Councilman Ingberg. Second by Councilman Gaines. Do we have proponents? Do we have any opponents? Any council discussion? Please vote.
8 yeas, 0 nays.
Motion passes. Next is item F10. I'm gonna request that this be deferred until after closed session. And because we're gonna go into a closed session, we got some students here too. I want to explain what we're doing. First of all, let's go into committee reports and then comments from the floor, and then I'll talk about them. I believe the audit ad hoc committee met, is that right? Any update from that?
Yes, the audit ad hoc committee met, and our subject of discussion was the audit, selecting the organization that will be the city's audit for the year ending in September 2014, and we recommend that we continue with the same company as we have in past years. They've been operating on, as we discussed it, a 3-year contract with options to renew, and this would be the first renewal option year. We also directed staff to, at some time in the future, at a time when we could consider going out for bids on a new contract, to bring that subject back to the audit committee so we can consider whether next year we exercise another option year or do we go out to bid. And so sometime early 2015 that subject should be brought up.
Very good, thank you. I don't believe any other committees have met. Do we have any comments from the floor? See, we have a student with us. You want to come up and introduce yourself? As a reminder to council, school has started and Mr. Keller is still teaching government class, so we'll start seeing students again.
My name is Ryan Horeska. I go to Papillion La Vista South High School. I came here to learn more about the city council, what you do for our city, and to take notes on how you work, how you operate, for a grade, of course, for Mr. Keller in his honors American government class. So.
Great, thank you.
Absolutely.
If you've got questions for us, we will have a closed session, but we'll be back afterwards if you want to have any discussion with any of us. Any other comments from the floor? Any council comments? Ms. Klug.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to comment that on September 27th, the Papillion La Vista South is going to be hosting a band competition. We're anticipating about 16 premier bands from around the metro area to the tune of about 1,800 students coming in and demonstrating their skills in the marching competition. We're anticipating the Monarch Band will be marching in the morning, with the Titan Band marching in the afternoon. So I would encourage all of our citizens in the cities and surrounding areas to please mark that day on your calendar and consider coming out to see what these high schools are doing, not only our 2 local high schools, but all the high schools in the metro area that'll be attending. Thank you.
Very good, thank you. Any other council comments? Just a few things from the last couple of weeks. Attended the Midlands Hospital Charitable Council meeting. Also went to an open house and tour for the Fidelity Data Center. We got a world-class operation at Fidelity. It was one of the last tours before that went on to lockdown. They went into production on Monday, and so you can't get into the facility anymore. But they're going to be a great community partner. Also attended ribbon cutting with some other council members for the Sylvan Learning Center up in Terra Plaza. And Mr. Sturzman and I also met with Sarpy County Economic Development just to sit down and really look at all of the land in Papillion and future land use. So as they get proposals in, they can steer those to the right areas within Papillion. Great meeting. Also attended, along with a lot of people, the Papillion Days appreciation lunch. The Papillion Community Foundation and the executive board put that on for the employees, so that was nice. A couple of reminders for the next couple of weeks. The League of Nebraska Municipalities, the annual conference is September 24th to the 26th in North Platte. If you and I believe the agenda is at your table. If you want to go to that, be a good idea to hopefully register this week. You can do late ones, but we get a benefit by doing it this week. There's 2 ribbon cuttings this week, one on Thursday at Frank Chiropractic and one on Friday at Anytime Fitness on 96th and 370. They have new ownership and have revitalized that place. You also see a new face when you come into 3rd floor. We got a new administrative assistant because of Ms. Wahinkle's promotion. We had somebody move downstairs, and so we hired a new employee, Laura Rogers. If you see her at the front desk, welcome her. And then just as a reminder, everybody's been hearing about the negotiations between Blue Cross Blue Shield and Uninet. Those negotiations did affect the city. We have Blue Cross Blue Shield as a carrier, and those two parties did not come to an agreement. And so Blue Cross did send us notice that all Uninet or Allegiant doctors are out of network now. And that was effective, I believe, on Monday. Blue Cross Blue Shield says they're doing that for cost containment purposes, but what's interesting is by pulling those doctors out of network in our middle of our contract year, the value of our policies just went down for employees that have those doctors. But the cost savings was not passed on to us. So while they're doing it for cost containment, they're keeping the cost savings and not passing them down to us. So we'll have to keep that in mind when we renew our insurance premiums and go through our contract negotiations. We do have a closed session. Is there a motion to go into closed session to protect the public interest to discuss potential litigation regarding insurance? Motion by Councilman Glover. There are a lot of those. Who's second? Mr. Florence. Do we have any proponents? Do we have any opponents? Any council discussion? Please vote.
8 yeas, 0 nays.
I will restate for the record the purpose for the closed session is only to discuss potential litigation regarding insurance. The closed session will include the mayor, the city council, assistant city administrator, city attorney, city clerk, and James Charlesworth. I would like to restate the only topic discussed in closed session was potential litigation regarding insurance. Do we have a motion to come out of closed session? Motion by Councilman Klug. Second by Councilman Gaines. Please vote. Mr. Jaworski.
8 yeas, 0 nays.
Motion passes. So next is item F10, Resolution R140140, a resolution to approve Travelers Insurance Company as the provider for the city's property, liability, and workman's comp insurance coverage. Do we have a motion to approve Resolution R140140? Motion by Councilman Jaworski. Second by Councilman Stubbe. Do we have proponents? If you'd state your name for the record.
I'm sorry. James Charlesworth and Associates.
Anything to say?
Thank you, Mayor, members of the council. Nothing quite clears a room like insurance. Included in your packet's an overview of the property and liability workers' compensation project. We've been working on this for a little over a year. In summary, the city agreed to terminate their relationship with Alarm effective October 1 of 2014. That was passed back in September of 2013. The city entered into an interlocal agreement with Hastings, Holdridge, and La Vista to seek an insurance broker to competitively market our property liability and workers' compensation insurance. A public notice was issued, and we had approximately 13 responders to the RFP for broker services. We had 6 proposals and did 4 interviews, ultimately selecting Arthur J. Gallagher as our broker. Gallagher is the 4th largest broker in the world and had excellent references and experience in the municipal insurance field. In your proposal, you'll see their market report. They approached approximately 13 markets and focused on the travelers based on the interest that travelers showed to the city. Travelers also visited the city. We toured city facilities and met with city staff. Briefly, Travelers is admitted in the state of Nebraska. They have an AM Best rating of an A++ 15, which is the highest rating available with over $2 billion in adjusted policyholder surplus. Their fully insured program gives us the ability to tailor our insurance to our losses and our services. Based on the recommendation of Arthur J. Gallagher, we concur with their opinion and their recommendation to approve the Travelers program for an amount of $753,720. And I believe your resolution includes the broker fee.
And that's a savings of how much over the current?
Approximately 90, I'm sure it's written in here, $95 to $100,000.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Do we have any other proponents? Do we have any opponents? Any council discussion? Mr. Glover.
Mayor, I will be abstaining from this vote. I am a current alarm board member, and that's our current insurance holder, so I will be abstaining from voting on this.
Thank you. Any other council comments? I don't think we have to vote on an abstention, do we? Oh, we do. We don't need a second on it, though, and there's no discussion. Please vote on the request to abstain by Mr. Glover because he is a current board member.
7 yeas, 0 nays.
Motion passes. Any other council discussion? Please vote. Oh, Mr. Stubbe.
Yeah, I just want to make a comment. I think this is an example of the city looking at wise use of taxpayer dollars. I appreciate the fact that we went out and looked at a broker to provide the services that we need. So I definitely am going to support this.
Thank you very much. Any other council discussion? Please vote.
Seven yeas, 0 nays. Glover abstains.
Motion passes. Do we have a motion to adjourn? Motion by Councilman Klug, second by Councilman Glover. Please vote. Ms. Klug.
8 yeas, 0 nays.
We are adjourned. Thank you.